Hello. Target audiences are really hard to figure out. Maybe this isn't true for everyone. Maybe I'm special. But I had a really hard time figuring out my target audience. And I think part of the reason I had such a hard time is because the advice is just, it does not make sense in my brain. So I guess this is Deciphering Writing Advice, which I haven't done for a while. Hello, welcome back to Deciphering Writing Advice, where I take writing advice and I try to make it make sense. So when it comes to your target audience, people say you should have, I'm just going to give you the original pieces of advice that I've cobbled together into like one uniform piece of advice that I hate. Then I'm going to tell you my advice. But people will tell you to make your Target Tracey. That's not what they call it. It's what I'm calling it, Target Tracey. Where it's your ideal avatar of your target audience. Apparently you should give them a gender, which I think is nonsense. But I am non-binary, so I would. Apparently you should give them a gender, you should give them an age, usually an age range, but like you stick them in the middle of that age range. You should say if they've got kids, if they've got pets, if they're married, if they're unmarried, if they're single. Those are 3 different things. If they're straight, queer, I was going to say other, but I suppose, is there an other? Anyway, you should say what their 5 favourite movies are and their 5 favourite books and what sandwich they like to eat. I don't know. There's a lot of detail that goes into these things sometimes. And some of them are less detailed than that. Some of them are more specifically about like what media they like, because obviously we're talking about books. Now, if you've not been here before, hi, these are my books. I write books. That's what I do. Sci-fi and fantasy books specifically. And if you want to check them out, there's always a link to my website in the description box below, which has all of my books on it, obviously, and where you can buy them. Anyway, so your Target Tracey is supposed to be in this like exquisite level of detail. And then you can utilize that Target Tracey. Some people have up to 3 Target Traceys, but most people just have 1, which I think is even weirder. You should use that Target Tracey as you are speaking directly to Target Tracey every single time you post on Instagram. Every single time you make an advert, it's supposed to appeal to Target Tracey, right? You are supposed to go where Target Tracey will be and spend time there and ingratiate yourself in Target Tracey's circles so that you can pitch your book more effectively. And that sounds like a lot. Like people say that and then immediately afterwards they say, be genuine. And it's like, I do not understand how you can have purposefully gone into Target Tracey's circles for the purpose of selling your books and then be genuine, because fundamentally you have always entered under the pretense. You always have this goal of selling books. Surely. But I don't know. Maybe that's me being literal again. I do that a lot. But when it comes to wrangling your Target Tracey and your secondary Stevie and your tertiary, I need another T name now, Terry. They're all E ending names, it's fine. Target audience members, you always end up in the same position. You've got these specific people and you're supposed to be talking directly to them. The problem, well, one of the many problems I have with this is these people aren't real. They're not real. They don't exist. You're not actually speaking to them. They don't actually go places. They're not actually engaging in things because they're not real. They're not real people. They're pretend people. They're as pretend as these people in my books, right? And it bugs me because I don't understand how people can utilize that and actually use it. So then I started thinking, the next stage, once I realised that all of this target audience advice wasn't applicable, or not necessarily wasn't applicable, but like wasn't useful, didn't make sense to me. I couldn't use it because it didn't make sense. And because I couldn't get past this isn't a real person, they don't actually go anywhere. Literal thinking. I then went on to say, okay, who is a fan of my books? Because I already had a book at this point. I was like, okay, who is a fan of my books? Who am I writing these for? And I was like, I am writing them for people like me and people like my wife. And I was like, cool, that isn't actually helpful. because I'm basically a hermit. I spend most of my time at home. I don't have a lot of friends. Not in that I don't have any friends. I have friends. I have friends. I definitely have friends. I play D&D with people every week. I do have friends. Most of my friends are proxy friends. They were friends with my wife first, and then I go where my wife goes because that's the kind of couple we are. And I get introduced to the friends by that, and then we become friends as well. So most of our friends are our friends now. The marriage happened. I'm not wearing my wedding ring. But the marriage happened, and now everything is ours. We share everything, including friends. But part of that is because I work from home making these, and that's not a hugely social situation. Although I have been making other author friends lately, which is really nice. If any of you are here, hello. Although I doubt that. Not in a mean way. I just don't think that they're likely watching my YouTube videos. Prove me wrong if you like. But yeah, like, I try to think like, okay, well, if my target audience is people like me and people like my wife, where do we go? And the trouble with that is that the vast majority of marketing these days is done via social media or going to events in person, which is why I've been to so many events this year. If you didn't know, I've been to 3 different events this year, although I did apply to 5, 7, 6. I think I applied to 6 events and I got into 3 of them, which is a pretty decent return on investment. I actually got into 4 of them, but I couldn't go to one because my car was broken and I couldn't get there. So, you know, there's an even better return on investment or return on application for that. But anyway, the point is I've been going to more events because that's where my target audience is, right? And the reason that I think my target audience is at Comic-Con is because it's people like me and my wife, right? But the vast majority of marketing happens online these days. And you are supposed to look for what social media to join based on where you think your target audience is, which is why I have a presence on Tumblr. My wife, prime target audience member, does not have social media, does not spend time online. I know, what a weirdo. Love her, but it's weird. She doesn't. She hasn't got an Instagram. She hasn't got a Tumblr. She hasn't got a Facebook page. She hasn't got Blue Sky or Mastodon. Is that one? I don't know. She just doesn't have anything. She does not have a presence online. She is offline. She has nothing. No social media. So when deciding what social media to use, I couldn't even pick where I was because I don't really use social. Like I have a casual Tumblr and a professional Tumblr because I use Tumblr a lot. But that's pretty much where I am. I'm on Tumblr and I'm on YouTube. And YouTube isn't technically social media, even though it kind of technically is. It's one of those weird wibbly wobbly bits. So where are my target audience? Offline is apparently the answer to that question. So that doesn't actually help, does it? So I had to come up with a solution to this problem. Like, okay, so my target audience is people like me and my wife and my friend, my friend from uni who buys all of my books, who also doesn't spend any time online. So where are these people? These people are at conventions. That's why I do conventions. That's why I'm so big at the minute on trying to do in-person events in a reasonable distance of my home. Because that's where I will find people who want to buy my books. That's where they'll be, because that's where I used to be. That's where my wife used to be, and that's where my friend who reads all of my books used to be. We all befriended each other over going to conventions. That was a big thing that we did together. Now we live distant. Well, me and my wife live together, obviously, but my friend lives quite far away, so we don't get to go to as many things together anymore. Sad face. But yeah. So I wasn't sure where to find people online, but I knew I still had to do online marketing because, well, going to events in a certain distance from my house really limits how many people are coming. Although one of the places in decent distance of my house is London, which is basically where I've done all of the events I've done so far, apart from one. But decent distance from my house, mostly London. And obviously London is a fairly, like, it's a big city. People travel there, right? And people travel there for events like Comic-Con. So, okay, you meet me. Like, it's not completely absurd to think that you have a wider range of access to people with something like Comic-Con than you do with something like, I don't know, a local craft fair, for example. But it still is a limited view, a limited access to people. Like, there's only so many people that can afford tickets to Comic-Con. There's only so many people who can travel there. So how do I find a target audience online? And I don't have the best answer to this ever. Sorry if you were hoping desperately for like all the solutions in the world. I don't have those. But I do have how I figured out my target audience online. And that is to break down what makes me and my wife my primary target audience. And part of that is basically just matching the people you know actively already like your stuff with the things your stuff has about it. So, for example, myself and my books. Most of my books have non-binary protagonists. I, as a non-binary human, am looking for books with non-binary main characters. Bing! That's a connection point. That's something that matches your target audience to your product, to your book. I'm also looking for books that have some romance in them, but not primarily romance. So, like, it's a genre and it has a romance subplot. Bing! I'm looking for sci-fi and fantasy books. Bing! I am looking for books that have low description. Bing! And suddenly you start seeing a picture of the things you have to offer. And that, in my opinion, is a little bit more important than your target audience when you're figuring these things out. What you have to offer, knowing your offer, will help your target audience find you instead of you going and finding them. It's a slower process this way. You can obviously also do this to figure out your target audience, your Target Tracey as it were, and go where Target Tracey is. Or you can use this to really clearly define your offer, what you have to give, and then people will come to you because you are really specific and clear about what you have to offer. And if people are looking for the thing that you have to offer, they'll find you. That is the two ways that target audiences work. There are people out there actively, intentionally looking for what you have to offer. You just have to make it really obvious that that is what you're offering. And I think this is one of these things that's been playing on my mind a bit because I've been going to these events in person. And so I'm seeing other people pitching their work, and that really does help as well. Like, if you can get out to even just a craft market, or even just like looking online at other people going to events, but ideally if you can get out and like see events in person, you can see how people are pitching, and you can start figuring out like, oh, right, that's how this person's pitching, and that's comparable to my stuff, or that's how this person's pitching, and it's really enticing to me even though it's not my genre. Or this is how this person's pitching and I kind of hate it. Is it working for them? Like, you can utilize all of that information to help build an understanding of how you're going to pitch your own books in this case. Like, obviously you can use this for more than just books, but I do just talk about books. And I think that I've seen a few people at conventions and events who are really nice potentially, but their pitch is just too wide. And like, I think sometimes a wide pitch can be fine. Like, if you've got something that's sort of quite generically applicable, that's kind of okay. And also, I think that maybe you're shooting yourself in the foot, because if you cast too wide a net, you're going to end up with a lot more people who are disappointed with what they got. If you are pitching your book as, and I'm not going to use the same pitch that anyone's actually used, this is a completely made up pitch that I've come up with based on some of the things that I've heard that I think, when I hear it, I think, oh, is that what you're doing? Okay. But if you said to someone as a pitch for your book, do you like DC and Marvel movies? What does that mean? Like, that's such a wide scope of like potential meanings. Lots of people like DC and Marvel movies. Some people like them for the spectacle. Some people like them for the banter. Some people like them because they're bringing to life their beloved comic books. Some people like them because they're dark and gritty, but only like the dark and gritty ones. Some people like the ridiculous, fun, silly ones. Like my favorite Batman movies. My favorite Batman movies are, you know, that quadrilogy of Batman movies where I think it's Tim Burton directed some of them, but God, everyone just calls them Nipple Batman. Those ones where it's like a bunch of different guys playing Batman, but they're all supposed to be the same Batman. Those ones, those are my favorite Batman movies because they're silly and they're fun. My favorite Superman piece of media that I've ever come across is the Lois and Clark TV series from the 90s. Lois and Clark Adventures of Superman. That one. That's my favorite. And it's like, the reason that's my favorite is because I'm so much more interested in Clark Kent than I am in Superman. Like, how does this mild-mannered reporter manage life when his side gig is running off in tights and saving the world? And like, I love the Christopher Reeve movies. I love Smallville also. I like a lot of that sort of, I'm going to call it brightly coloured Superman stuff. And that means I don't like Justice League. I don't like Batman v Superman. I don't like the dark, gritty, mumbly stuff because it's not for me. But if you ask me if I like Marvel and DC movies, well, mostly DC to be fair, I can't say no. Because I do. Because DC movies include silly Batman and Adventures of Lois and Clark. Like, and Batman Wayne Family Adventures. So I do. That's not a movie that's not a movie to be fair. But, so I do like it. But I'm not going to be happy if I'm not going to be happy with a product that ends up being like a Marvel blockbuster or like a DC Justice League era movie, because that's not what I like. And by pitching it that wide, you're going to end up with people like me who are disappointed in it because you pitched it in a way that didn't really clarify what it was. And I see people doing this. I see especially new authors making this mistake. And I don't have a way to be there like, you need to be more specific about your target audience. Because I do think that you end up with better results by being more specific. Because a lot of the time as well, like if you pitched me a book, this is my planner. If you pitched me a book and you said, it's like Marvel and DC movies, I'd be like, I'm not going to buy that. It could be the best thing ever. It could be Batman Win Family Adventures, the comic. And like, that's my favorite thing right now. Like, I love that thing. It could be that, but if you're pitching it to me as DC movie, I'm gonna walk away. You've missed your target audience because I don't want something that's like a DC blockbuster. I want something silly and fun because my whole life is silly and fun. That's my whole thing. And I think like I saw someone at one of the conventions I've been to this year. I'm trying to be really non-specific because I don't want this person to stumble across this video and be upset by it, because I'm not trying to upset them. I'm not trying to single them out. I've seen other people do this as well, but I saw someone at a convention I've been to this year doing the thing where they're pitching their very first book ever, and they're so excited about it and it's great, but they're pitching it as, do you like a giant blockbuster movie that loads and loads of people have watched and enjoyed? Do you like the #1 children and young adult book series of the last 10 years? Do you like the #2 children and young adult book series of the last 10 years? And it's like, oh, The only thing these three things have in common is that they're an adventure narrative. And there's lots of other things that are adventure narratives. And this particular person that I'm not singling out, but that springs to my mind, was pitching that to every single person who passed the table. And I'm not saying don't pitch to everyone who passes the table. Like, I elevated, celebrated Francesca McMahon for doing the exact same thing. But the thing that Fran did differently to this person I'm not going to name because we don't name and shame, was that Fran's got this really specific pitch that scares off the people who aren't interested and draws in the people who would be interested. Fran's pitch for May was lesbian Tarzan. Fran's pitch for novel number 2 is Percy Jackson but Sapphic. And Celtic, but Celtic and Sapphic, yes. And those are excellent pitches because they really define what it is that Fran has to offer. Again, this is something that specifically and genuinely appeals to the target audience. It's not going out and seeking your target audience. It's yelling from the rooftops. It's putting out your, to continue using my DC metaphors, it's putting on your bat signal specifically for the people who are interested. And yeah, okay, maybe you're going to get a couple of moths from the big light, but you're mostly going to get the bat fam, right? And it's that, like, do you put on a siren noise and hope that the right emergency services come by? Or do you flick on the bat signal and make something more specific? Do you go searching for I'm making a mockery of this whole thing. Do you go searching for someone in high vis in the street that you hope can help you? Or do you flick on the bat signal and call the help to you? You know? Like, do you want to go searching for your target audience? Or do you want your target audience to come searching for you? If you know your offer well, you can get your target audience to come to you. Yes, you need to kind of be where they are. But most of the time with the modern internet, your target audience probably is going to be where you find yourself. Because generally speaking, we write books we like. And the people who like them are going to be people who like the same kinds of things we like, by and large. Like, the amount of people I end up talking over the table to about Mass Effect and Dragon Age and Lara Croft and and like, okay, with Mass Effect I can see that there is a comparative there in the sci-fi big world. The council are the worst kind of vibes with IPA series. And even with Dragon Age, I can see like there's like a fantastical element, there's mages, there's a quest. Lara Croft doesn't really have anything in common with any of my books. It's one of my favourite things ever. But it doesn't really have, I mean, I've worn my Lara Croft t-shirt on videos before. That's retired now because it's too old. It's from 1998. But there's no reason to talk to people about Lara Croft. There's no reason to talk to people about like any of these things that I like. But the people who like my books, by and large, generally like the same things that I like. They like the media that I like. And it's not always a one-to-one. Sometimes you get recommended things and you're there like, yeah. And like most of the time, I'm polite about it. And you'll never know. If you're on the other side of the table, you will never know. If I've tried the thing and I absolutely despised it, it was the worst thing I've ever read in my entire life and I hated every single second I read it, and I stopped by chapter 3, you will never know whether that thing is that, because you're excited about it and I'm excited that you're excited about it. And I know that the target audience crossover is pretty common, so I just sometimes pretend to like the thing. Because I know that people are interested. Like, there's this one really popular set of queer books at the minute. Queer sci-fi books with like fantastical elements. And I'm not going to be specific because again, I hated it. I hated it so much. But I see people cosplaying from it and I end up in conversations with people about it. And I'm like, yeah, it's really interesting concept, isn't it? Like, it's really detailed. It's really, like, those characters are so dynamic. And I'll say all these kinds of things. And, like, I'll say those kinds of things about things I really love also. And, like, I can even pick out a couple of the plot points, which, again, I'm not going to say because I hated it and I don't want anyone to know. But, like, I'll pick out a couple of the plot points and be there like, oh, yeah, this thing and that thing happens and this thing happens. And people think that I like it because I'm presenting myself as not having despised every single second I read it. Because I don't want to do that to people. Like, people could come up to me and say that they really love Batman v Superman, and I'll be there like, oh yeah, what about it's really exciting to you? And I'm excited that they're excited, and that is a genuine thing that I have. Like, I genuinely do get excited about other people's interests, even if I know I don't like it. Like, you could literally tell me that your favourite thing in the whole world is, what do I hate? What do I hate? What do I hate that I don't mind admitting that I hate it? Your favourite thing in the whole world is football, like British, European, non-American football, regular football you play with your feet on the ball, that football. What do they call it in the US? I don't know, I can't remember. It's not important. You could tell me that you love football, that football is your favourite thing in the whole world, and I would be like, cool, who's your favourite player? Because I literally could not care less about football. Actually, that's not true. I hate football. I care enough to hate it. I don't like it. I think it's boring and annoying. I hate having to play it in school. I get annoyed because the kids are constantly playing it in the park, and then sometimes the ball will come over to me and they'll be like, kick it back, and I'll be like, I'll throw it, but I won't kick it. Not because I'm like, I won't kick it, but because, like, if I try and kick the ball, I will fall over. Also, Porthos really loves the balls, which is really annoying for me personally with my dog that I take to the park on a lead most of the time. Like, if it's busy, especially on a lead, he's really good at coming back when he sees other people. So, like, it's not a thing. But like, so when it's busy, he's still on a lead, but then he'll see the football and he'll be like, oh my gosh, a ball! That's so exciting! I want to play with the ball! And then the ball comes over and he's like, yes! And I'm like, no! And then I have to find a way to get the ball back to the kids. Anyway, that's not important. The point is, I hate football. I especially hate being made to watch football. And I have nothing to say about football. I don't know anything about football other than there are teams and they play. And there is a big championship that happens. This is the extent of my knowledge. But when people are excited to tell you about something, I just really love hearing it. Like, I'm so excited that people are excited about something. So even if I hate it, I'll still get excited for people because it's just who I am. So I just really want that to be super clear, that I'm not pretending to like something because it benefits me. I'm pretending to like something because I know that it's exciting for other people to be like, especially when they're in the cosplay and I recognize it. And I'm like, I remember being in the cosplay and people recognizing me and how great that felt, and then being able to like bond with fans of something because somebody recognized your cosplay and then they were willing to talk to you about it. And even if that doesn't like go anywhere or do anything, it's still a nice interaction for that person, and it just makes their day a little bit happier. And I want to be the person who made your day a little bit happier. Or it's not even that. I don't even necessarily want to be the person who made your day a little bit happier. I just want your day to be a little bit better, you know? So anyway, finding your target audience means casting a specific net. And sometimes that means having conversations about things that you like, that therefore hopefully you will be able to find your target audience through liking the same things. But it also means potentially doing the thing where you're like, oh yeah, I really love Lara Croft, but like the original like Tomb Raider quadrilogy, and then the anniversary ones where they rebooted one but it's in the middle of like a trilogy. Those are my favorites. I'm not a super big fan of like the 2013 Lara Crofts, and having people be there like, oh no man, I love the 2013 Lara Crofts, I think she's so dynamic as a character. And I'm not going to be there like, I think she's a whiny baby to their faces, because that's called rude, and we don't like to be rude. And it's not nice to like shit all over somebody's joy. But I will be there like, no, I just love how capable she is in the original ones. And like the dynamics of the whole situation is much more fun. Plus you fight a T-Rex, man. Like that's a great time for me. I love fighting the T-Rex. The tigers are terrifying, but I love fighting the T-Rex. And like I hate fighting the gorilla also. The amount of things you have to fight in these games. But like the big thing that I love about Lara Croft is the actual exploratory nature of it, and like figuring out the puzzles more than anything. Like more than fighting the T-Rex. As much as fighting the T-Rex. I love fighting the T-Rex and I love figuring out the puzzles. Those are my favourite things about Lara Croft. And I feel like the rebooted 2013 Lara Crofts don't really have that. But then you have these conversations with people. Like this is relevant. You have these conversations with people where you say things like that and you can figure out that even though they also like Lara Croft, they're in it for a very different reason. And they're not going to like what you have to offer. And you can still pitch it if you want to. But you've cast a very specific net with that conversation. I will remind you that I've used Lara Croft because it's not a comp title. But like I said about Star Trek, like if you want the highbrow, like first contact stuff, that's not what I have in the Interplanetary Alliance novels. That's not what we do. They're not on first contact missions. They're not on exploratory missions. I mean, one of them is kind of on an exploratory mission, but that's not actually the point of the novel, so it doesn't really matter. And so if somebody tells me that that's the thing they really love about Star Trek, I'm going to specify that that doesn't happen in my books. And then if they decide not to buy it, that's not a bad thing, because it's not going to appeal to them, and if it's not going to appeal to them, then what's the point of them buying it? If they're not going to enjoy it, what's the point? And I think for me, that's where a lot of these target audience conversations end up clicking together, is that if you know your offer, therefore you know your target audience, therefore when people say they don't like the idea of your book, you know they're not in the target audience because you've been specific about your offer and they've said no, so they're not in this middle zone where these two things meet. And I think that's why it's so important to know your offer, potentially more so than it is to know your target audience. But that's just my opinion. And I hope this was coherent. And I would love to hear your opinion, if you have any, about this specific topic. Like if you have any advice for figuring out your target audience, whether it's to do with figuring out your offer or whether it's to do with some other method that you do it through. Even if you think that the like general advice of identifying your target Tracey and like talking directly to them is a good idea. Like I'll admit, I'm not completely immune to the talking to the target Tracey concept. There is one particular person who I'm going to entitle as my German friend, because I don't know if you are happy with me sharing your name like this, which I do know because it's on your profile. But my German friend, who we don't actually know each other really, but has read all of my books and comments on my stuff and is the best. And sometimes when I'm doubting myself and I'm thinking, is this okay? Is it worth it? Is it enough? Am I enough? I can use the fact that this person I don't actually know in Germany likes my stuff and comments on my stuff. And like, I don't want to let this person down by not sharing stuff. I don't want to let this person down by not writing the next book, because I want to make them happy and I want them to enjoy what I have to offer. So sometimes when I'm feeling a bit rough about it, or I'm thinking, what am I going to post? What am I going to do? I wonder, well, what would this particular person like? And the thing is this is not a target Tracey, because I didn't make this person up. This person is real. Hello. And it's so helpful to me because this is a real person. Like, remember I said at the beginning, the difficulty with the target Tracey is they're not real. This is a real person, and this is a person that like hasn't come to my whole situation through being a friend or a friend of a friend. We just stumbled across one another. That was just something that happened, like ships in the night. And like, it's just it does help having someone outside of that realm of people who already love you, like friends and family, people who already love you, be invested in what you have to offer. But the only way to get people invested in what you have to offer is to know what you're offering and offer that specifically. Like, what do I have to offer? I write queer sci-fi and fantasy books. That's what I do. That's my offer. I can be more specific. I can nail it down to really detailed pitching for the whole thing, or per book, or per series, or whatever. But in the grand scheme of things, my big call, my bat signal up in the sky is I write queer and disabled sci-fi and fantasy books. And if any of those appeal, come and have a conversation with me, or look on my website, or whatever, and find out more and see if, as the pitch gets more and more specific, as the offer gets more and more detailed, you still are interested. Because no harm if not. But if it sounds interesting, you want to investigate it, right? If you want to find out if you want to find out more about my books, they're right in the description box, right next to the like and the subscribe buttons. If you feel like sticking around, I am still on track to share a YouTube video every other week for the rest of the year. I'm really excited that is actually working out for me, because I didn't think it would when I started doing them every other week instead of once a month. And I was worried that when my wife started working from home with me, like I talked about in my last YouTube video, that it was going to make a really big impact. But the biggest impact we've had so far is now half of my face is blue because it is dark outside. And I had to find my ring light again, which I haven't used in since we moved into this house. But it's fine. It's all good. I will see you in 2 weeks' time. Bye.